sweet witches. That phrase, hearing that phrase every day, is probably going to be one of the things that I miss the most about camp. It has been suggested to me by a new friend from camp that I perhaps start my vlogs back by talking about how I am transitioning, how I am reintegrating into my regular everyday life from being at camp. So I'm kind of starting at the end of my experience by doing this, but it makes sense because that's where I am right now. And then I will get into some videos telling you more about my experience at camp, maybe some specific things, and definitely some overall lessons that I've taken away that I want to share with you. And then later down the line, perhaps more specifics will show up. But there are definitely a few main things that I want to share with you first, and they will come in separate small packets, compartmentalized into different videos. So to begin, my transitioning reintegration process has been pretty good. It's been a bit slow, but I think that's normal. And a lot of people who were at camp with me who have been to camps before, some of them said that their re-entry was pretty easy compared to some that they've experienced in the past. But there have also been several other people who have had a rough go of it as well. So I feel like I'm kind of in the normal area for what can be expected for that. So I'll start from the beginning. When I left the camp area, one of my fellow campers who was in my path with me drove me to the airport, and we stopped on our way at a little convenience store to get some snacks and to practice reintegrating into the normal world. And I think that was a great idea, and I think it was successful, and I think it helped. And then I got to the airport, and I was pretty early, and I also wanted to finish a drink that I had gotten, because you can't take liquids through security with you. So I wanted to finish my iced tea. So I sat down at a cafe that was just at the, in the entrance of the airport, and I was trying to follow the instructions that we had been given when we dialed down and got ready to leave, which included not singing any camp songs and not listening to any music that would be trance-invoking or anything like that. So I was trying to come up with a song that would be nice for me to sing that wasn't a camp song, and the first thing that came to mind was something that we sing at my UU church periodically, Dona Nobis Pacem. So I was sitting there kind of just trying to be in my space in the airport and get ready to go through security and everything like that. I was several hours early, which is good. I like to be early. And so I'm sitting there and I'm singing to myself, Dona nobis pacem pacem, but rather more slowly. And when I got up to go, I noticed there was an older Japanese gentleman at the next table who had been listening to me sing, and he just gave me the biggest smile when I got up. And he didn't say anything, and I didn't say anything. I just smiled and nodded to him, and he kind of gave me a little wave as I went on my way to security. So that's how it began. And then when I did finally get to my gate, I spent a lot of time reading some more of Women Who Run with the Wolves, which I had brought with me. And I didn't do a lot of reading while I was at camp because I was doing a lot of journaling and sleeping and going to optional offerings in my free time. But I had the book with me, so I did some reading of that in the gate. And some people struck up little conversations with me. And I also took that time to read a little note that my affinity group had given to me right before I left. One of my friends from affinity group gave me a little note, and everyone else from my affinity group had signed it, and I cried. You guys made me cry in the airport because, and I had planned, like, okay, I won't read this until I get to my layover stop, so I'm like far enough away, but I couldn't wait. And I'm glad I didn't, because it would have been really weird to then go back into being really emotional. So I kind of got that out of the way, and then I could go. But it was really nice just to have like another reminder that those groups would continue, and we would still be there for each other, and we all connected on Facebook, things like that. And then I got on my plane, and the first plane ride that I had a connecting flight, so I had two. The first one was pretty challenging because I was sitting between kind of a middle-aged man from New York, and a middle-aged lady who I think was traveling alone. And it was challenging because the gentleman had asked me if I was going home from school, and I said, no, I'm not in school anymore. And he said, what do you do? And I said, I work in theater. And he started telling me about his daughter, who was a musician and wanted to be a musician and a piano teacher, and really wasn't doing much to make her dream come true other than spend her father's money. So it was very challenging because I was in this place where I wanted to say, you know, and I did say, I said, good for her. She wants to go for, you know, something that she loves, and that'll be great. And he was very much against that because, I mean, I don't know her, but it seemed like from what he said that she's really not doing what she needs to do to make that happen. And she's just kind of being at home and spending his money and playing around with being a musician instead of actually taking the leap and going out and doing something and doing it on her own. So I kind of felt for him too, you know, that's his story. And so that was challenging because it was a very quick example of someone who has a dream and maybe doesn't know how to begin that journey yet, really, and that causes other people to think that their dream is a waste of time. And, you know, her two brothers went to school for computer science and finance, and they're doing really well, and why can't she just do that? And, you know, so that was challenging. And then the woman to the other side of me, we then got into conversations about just like airport etiquette and like silly things that we've seen happening at the airport. And that was more of a lighthearted conversation, at least. And the flight was good, though. And then the other thing about that flight was that there were a bunch of families that had kind of delayed us leaving because they didn't board during family boarding. And it was like a single mom with 3 young kids, and then another, either just the mother or maybe it was a couple, but I didn't see anyone else with her, an Indian family, and 2 or 3 kids in that family, and they were sitting one behind the other, and the 2 young boys from the family were like talking to each other between the cracks in the seats and introducing themselves and sharing what they were reading with the other, and it was adorable. And then when we were about to take off, the kids were trying to count down to the time when we would take off, and they kept getting to 0, and the plane hadn't taken off yet because we were still taxiing, and neither of their mothers like told them you have to wait till we get to the runway or anything. Like, they just totally just let them go, and it was hilarious because they would get to 0 and they'd be like, what? Why aren't we leaving yet? Let's start again. Maybe if we start from 20 this time. And there was one time where they were like, maybe if we start from 100, 99, 98. It was so cute. So that made us all laugh. I think that was a good time. And then, yeah, so then the flight was good. And my second flight back, I actually had an earlier boarding position, so I was able to choose a seat instead of getting stuck in one of the last seats, so I got a window seat for the very, very short flight back into Cleveland. It was like an hour, and I got to take a little bit of a nap. I came home really, really late. We stopped for snacks on the way home, came home, went to sleep, and then went and picked up my car from where it had been parked at my cousin's house the next day. And I didn't have to work that next day. I had planned that in advance, so I got a day to kind of chill. And then I did work that Saturday, the next day after I flew in, I did work. And it was surprisingly a very quiet day for a Saturday. That's usually one of our busiest days. It was pretty quiet, so I just had to work with one other girl. And it was good because I never get to work alone with her because she only works Saturdays and we're usually busy, so we need all 4 of us. So it was nice to just be me and her and the owners in the kitchen and the dishwasher as usual. But just the 2 of us servers. And it was a pretty easy day, but the technology was giving me a problem. It was like, I keep telling people, it was like when I text while drunk. I have never been so drunk that I don't know that my texts are coming out weird and can't correct them. But it's like when I first go to do it, it comes out garbled and I'm like, wait a minute, no. And then I correct it all. It always comes out fine. But that's how it was. I was trying to input orders into the computer at work and I kept knowing what I was doing, but I would hit the wrong button by mistake and I'd have to go back, okay, remove, undo, and redo it. And it was coming out fine, but it was taking me 2 or 3 times as long to do it. So then one of the owners was just like, hey, I get it, here, I'll do it for you. So she handled that part for the most part that day. But other than that, I was good. And then I had 2 days off again, and then I worked on Tuesday, and that was a lot better. Because I think Monday I had the opportunity to go to my friend's circle. She's the high priestess of the circle, Coven. I don't know what term they use. And she invited me to do my talk about prejudice against pagans and prejudice reduction strategies that I did at Conway Pagan Pride last fall and then at Cleveland Pagan Pride this past summer. So I went there to do that for her group, and I was able to participate in their Esbit ritual, small thing, as a guest. And they are an initiatory tradition, British traditional style more so. So there are certain things that they can't do with non-initiates present. And there was me, and there's also a girl who was thinking about joining their group, so she was also, her energy hadn't been integrated into the group either. So because the two of us were present, we just did a very simple celebration where we were able to participate. So that was really nice, and I think may also have helped me bring some of my energy back down even further than how I already had, because I was still feeling very floaty and flighty some of the time when I didn't have my grounding stone with me, which we empowered at camp, which I'll tell you about later. And so I think that helped a lot. And Sunday I went to church, and I feel like it was too early for me to do that because a lot of people in my church community haven't seen me for a few months, because after the play that I was done with, I had been busy trying to see other people. I filled my time with finally starting to catch up with friends and going back to yoga classes and stuff like that. And so my Saturday nights had been pretty busy, and I wasn't waking up in time for church on Sunday mornings, so I hadn't gone to church a lot of Sundays, although I had gone for a community kirtan. So I felt like I had been to church and I had seen my minister and I had seen a few people because I had gone to kirtan, but a lot of people who were just there for Sundays hadn't seen me in a long time. So I was like being bombarded when I came back. Where were you? We haven't seen you in forever. How are you? Have you heard about this, and what are you doing? And I feel like it was too much. It was too much love, too much positivity for what I was ready for. And especially since a lot of things were still triggering memories from camp or lessons that I had learned or messages that I've been listening to. And, there was even just crazy experiences, like someone brought a dog that has the same name as one of the teachers from camp. And then someone saw the necklace that I was wearing, and that reminded them of a story, and they told me this wonderful, crazy story that was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that my necklace reminded them of this, and I got this cool story out of it. So I'll tell you that more another time when I talk about the storytelling arc of this whole thing. But so just really cool stuff like that has been happening. Storytelling was a big part of camp, and so it's been interesting that wherever I go, it seems like people want to tell me stories, and I'm not asking them to even, it just kind of happens. And so I'm noticing that more, and that's really cool. There's so much more that I want to tell you about that, but it's so much more that it's gonna have to be another video. So I'm sorry, I'm always like alluding to things and being vague and then saying, but it'll come in another video. But it really will. There will be one all about storytelling and the idea of story and how we worked with that and how we're bringing that into the future. So the main thing that I will say right now before I end this that has to do with my transition, but also has to do with just all of camp in general, is that before I would describe camp as like, okay, it's a witchcraft training camp, whatever. And I said that because that's what it's called, but I know that it sounded kind of hokey, and I know that people were like, oh, okay, so you're being trained as a witch, blah, blah, blah. But really what it is, and what became clear to me, especially in our closing ritual when we got ready to leave and go back to our regular lives, is that the reason that it's called that, the reason that we refer to it as training, is because camp happens, and then when it ends, that's really the beginning, because that is the point at which we then go back to our regular lives and bring what we learned with us and bring that out into the world. So camp, in effect, is a training for going back home and for everything that we will do from that point on. So that's kind of where I am. That's kind of what's going on. And I am enjoying it. I'm enjoying my time off. I'm actually recording this on Thanksgiving, so I had yesterday and today off from work as well to try to, again, kind of get a little further in my process of coming back. And then I will have 2 days of work coming up next, and then my normal 2 days off. So I've had a nice, slow re-entry process, and I'm very grateful for that, among other things. I hope you all have a good holiday, whether you're in the States or not. I hope you have a good day in general, and a good weekend, and I will see you again very soon. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye.